Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, another Prydwen update is upon us because, of course, Wuthering Waves has just introduced another new character, Qiuyuan, to the game. And they've made some pretty crazy statements, I would dare say, when it comes to his overall placement, and I want to see just how justified some of that reasoning actually is. So what better place for us to start other than to just take a look at the changelog and see everything that has been updated. Because, of course, I do believe Prydwen has been a pretty reliable resource over the past couple of months. Actually, over the greater half of the year, for frankly being honest. When it does come to Wuthering Waves contact, I am actually in... I do oftentimes communicate with the person that's coordinating the chart over here, and I do have a bit of personal insight into their reasoning, and most of it does end up sticking most of the time. So without further ado, let's just go ahead, let's dive into the changelog and see just what the damage is for the second half of version 2.7. Alrighty, so 1030, TOA changes. Let's check them out. Qiuyuan, added as a tier 0 in both tier lists. Qiuyuan is one of the best teammates for the teams of two meta DPS characters, the DPS characters being Galbraina and Frolova. The best part is that Qiuyuan doesn't actually need his signature weapon to work at all, and that's entirely true, because he's got one of the best replacements in the game available for him. It's none other than everyone's favorite signature sword, Emerald of Genesis. This thing is just unfathomably good for a standard weapon. It gives all the stats that Qiuyuan actually needs. He's somebody that really likes having ER, and he's somebody that really likes having crit. And not having the damage bonuses from his weapon at S0 as a sub DPS isn't that big of a deal, because I'm just going to be honest, guys. I've already tested him out in a lot of different ways. His damage at S0 isn't really anything to write home about. And so not having the biggest buffs ever, but instead taking a bit more of a ER option with Emerald of Genesis is not really a concern for him in any of his teams. I can agree with that statement that Prydwen is making over here, that he doesn't need his sig to work, because he really genuinely does not. Since there are really good permanent options that work just fine on him, like Emerald of Genesis. He is one of the least limited weapon reliant characters in the game. And that's, again, because of all the reasoning we just provided. He has a really strong spot in the meta if either of these two characters is owned. However, we advise carefully considering before pulling for him if you don't have Galbraina or Frolova. And that is, without a doubt, a statement that I can comfortably make. If you don't have Galbraina and you don't have Frolova, I hope that you are willing to pull Qiuyuan to around S3 if you do plan on playing him. Because if you don't have either of these two units, he kind of will just not do anything on your account. He will just be like the worst character for any lineup because you don't have any teams that can leverage any of his strengths at all. So do keep that in mind. There's a big asterisk on this. I would dare say he deserves a partner tag on this list if he doesn't have it yet, because if you don't have those two characters, he's not really doing anything. So that's just something to keep in mind. He's very strong, but very tailored in what his use cases are. Now, we got Frolova. Tier 0.5 up to tier 0. Yep, just top of the meta with no signatures. With the latest changes to TOA, Frolova has become super strong in the meta. Her teammates are really flexible and accessible, and she can serve as the primary or secondary DPS to a team. Very true. She can actually be played as like a sub DPS that's off field. She has a low rotation time by DPS standard, high room for optimization, and her damage ramps up the longer the fight goes on, making her perfect for clearing lengthy content. Yes, Frolova has a lot of built-in mechanics, like things like her after sound mechanic, which A, gives her additional damage multipliers on the biggest nuke in her kit, and then B, also increases her crit damage as she gains more stacks of this after sound. And that after sound is built up, ladies and gentlemen, from teammates casting echo skills. So that's why Qiuyuan's one of her best teammates. That's also why Cantarella's one of her best teammates. And she just really does a lot better the longer the fight goes on. And one thing that's clear is that the TOA has started having fights that... Good lord, where the fuck? I'm in like a dungeon, bro. Get me out of here. The TOA has started having fights ever since they added, the last 2 floors to go from 30 to 36 stars. Adding floors 3 and 4 has meant that those stages end up going for way longer. And the end result is that she has more time to actually build up that after sound, build up all those buffs, increase her multipliers. And the end result is that, yeah, she's gotten a lot better with age in the game's meta. That's for certain. The thing is, though, while her signature weapon is a huge boost in damage compared to any permanent options, with Qiuyuan's release, Verlova's team has become so strong, it's comparable to Kartithia in neutral content, that it's difficult to argue against her being in any tier other than tier 0. So we're putting her up there for now. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you have Rosia, I'm sorry to say she now has almost no use cases in the game. Because her only real use case before was being on the Verlova team and being able to complete this whole sort of like mono havoc lineup. This is the reality, though. This team over here, this one is literally better. Not if your Qiuyuan is level 40 like mine, but this team is better than having Rosia in Qiuyuan slot. And oftentimes people can now say, based off of some practice and actual practicality, right? This team with Sanhua Camellia can oftentimes actually perform better than this team. So yeah, she's now sort of just been replaced by a 4-star in one team, and then replaced by a 5-star in another team. So I don't really think this midget has a team anymore. But if you still want to play her because you have her S6, go for it. I do think that's a little bit weird, though. That's just my little spiel on, you know, the viability of certain characters now that Qiuyuan's in the game. That's also going to cover the TOA changelog. I know it's a bit of a short one, so why don't we go ahead and now start taking a bit of a look at how the tier list has shifted or evolved with some time over here. Starting for the DPS category, we now have 4 tier 0 DPSs. We're going to be having Augusta, Kartithia, Galbrena, as well as Verlova. And so the situation over here is pretty simple. Galbrena is now comfortably in tier 0 with the release of Qiuyuan. Qiuyuan with Galbrena is absolutely disgusting. It's an incredibly strong team because, well, this character mainly deals echo skill damage, and he's an echo skill damage amplifier. Gives 50% actually. And so a lot of the times, this tier 0 ranking in the past was judging her based off of working with Lupa and Brandt. That team was okay though, right? This team with Qiuyuan and like Shorekeeper and Galbrena feels a lot more consistent. Feels like you're actually leading more into Galbrena's strength versus her kind of being, you know, assisted a lot by the dynamics that Lupa and Brandt can bring in with the whole mono fusion, pack hunt, all of that. So it's a bit more of an independent team, but she still has tier 0 performance in both lineups. So yeah, that's the truth of the matter. That's one of the benefits of being fusion. You get to use Lupa. Comes to the other units, Augusta and Yuna are naturally very, very strong together because of their like whole shield synergy and their built-in damage amp. It is naturally overkill for most of the content in the game, but she is in a comfortable spot in tier 0 for the TOA. Makes sense. Kartithia's over here. She does have the partner tag, though, that is worthy to keep in mind, because you really do need Arrow Rover, and you really do need Chacona to make this character feel really actually good in her gameplay. If you're not using either of those two, oh good lord, this character has some big issues. You can kind of see how Galbrena is actually a lot more flexible than Kartithia. She has 2 teams that she can use. Kartithia has 1. And it's really, unless you're S3 or S2, it is genuinely just 1 team that she can run. Kartithia and Arrow Rover. I think she loses points for flexibility, at least in my opinion, while all these other characters feel like they have way more lineups that they can use. And so, honestly, but, you know, just DPS-wise, she is the highest in the game. We've already talked about Verlova, blah, blah, blah. Now let's move on to some of the other units. Zani over here. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are beginning to recognize that this unit feels like shit to play. It is, without a doubt, I feel like this is one of the most overhyped units we've had in the history of the game. We had people going ahead and like basically spreading the equivalent of misinfo on her damage numbers, because they were basically using like a tool-assisted rotation that only a fucking AI could complete and require the enemy to make no actions at all for 30 seconds. And the end result is that in actual practice and in actual gameplay, using this character oftentimes yields you lower performance than using, like, almost anybody else on the list. I'm going to be real with you. All you need to do is think about the past TOA floors that we've had against semi-mobile enemies, and this character just sucks so bad against them, it's ridiculous. However, she does have a high ceiling for damage if you do play her well, so the expert tag is warranted. It's just, good lord, it doesn't feel like you're getting a lot out of the work that you're putting in to make her work. Carlotta, on the other hand, oh man, this character is just an absolute joke in terms of, like, difficulty level. She is the best beginner unit in the game. She still absolutely will, at like a full build S0R1 with like Jeja and stuff, to rotate pretty much all the content in the game that isn't the new TOA floors. Very, very, very consistent. Very hard to mess up her combos. She's like automatic, and she's, I think, the #1 comfort pick for any player out there when it comes to pretty much any content in the game that isn't Glacio resistant. She's just in a comfortable spot. I think she warrants this with her damage output. Very, very fair placement. Now, we're moving down a little bit, and this is where stuff starts getting a lot more populated. We have Camellia, Qiuyuan with the expert tag, Jinxie, and Phoebe. Yeah, I think this is a relatively fair sort of assumption. Jinxie and Qiuyuan still actually need, like, their best-in-slot supports. Camellia got screwed over because her best-in-slot support is Rosia, and Sanhua is, like, a side grade that can't be considered better than Rosia. So, she kind of just got fucked dealing with this absolute midget as like her best in slot support. Maybe and hopefully she'll get somebody better in the future. Phoebe, on the other hand, I've always thought she was a little bit clunky, but she is a dual rolled character who can also play as a sub DPS in confession mode. So her main DPS portion or piece or side falling behind a little bit, it doesn't feel as bad in my opinion because she is a multi-rolled character. However, she does do nothing in confession mode, so that is a fair thing to understand. And just in general, I think she's very signature reliant when it comes to her main DPS performance. We'll make sure to take a look at that later. Encore and Havoc Rover, I think comfortably in tier 1.5. Zhang Liao down here without his sig. Oh, good lord, I didn't think it was that bad. I think he belongs in tier 1. I don't think he's at tier 2. Wait, I swore they moved him down. I swore he wasn't this low. But, yeah, maybe we'll just have to check out where things are with the signatures later on. Sub DPS category, we gotta have Chakota, Augusta, Lupa, and Qiuyuan over in tier 0. I think that's relatively fair because all of these characters don't actually really need signatures to do whatever job they needed to do in the first place across their teams. They can still deliver a massive amount of value without having a massive amount of investment, and I think this is a good placement for them overall. Without SIGs. Now, on the other hand, we're going to have Phoebe, we're going to have Chang Li, Brant, Mortifi, and Jeja down here. I think Jeja is on the cusp of going to tier 1, if I'm frankly being honest, because, yeah, while she is great with Carlotta, it does kind of feel like she doesn't actually do that much. Like, good lord. If you actually take a look at how much damage her coordinated attacks are doing, they're like 6 or 7 or 8 or 9K or 10K. They're not really that much, and she fires them off kind of damn slow. So it's not really like she's doing a particularly large amount of damage, and that could be actually one of the reasons for why the Carlotta team doesn't feel like it's holding up just as high as some of these other alternatives, but it is what it is. Brandon Changeling, though, very strong. Mortifi is also, without a doubt, I think the best 4-star character in the game at the moment because there's just so many heavy attackers now that he can work out with, and he has a lot of viable comps. Catarella, Phoebe, Sanhua down here. Makes a bit of sense to me, though. Maybe, yeah, there's not a lot of basic attackers anymore, so Sanhua's demise does make a lot more sense. And then we got Rosia and Yinlin leading the pack as the most dog shit 5-star units in the game. These are without a doubt the worst limited 5-star units in the game. I think tier 1.5 is a little bit generous for them. They could actually belong in tier 2 if I'm frankly being real, because yeah, it's almost unforgivable how bad these characters are. Now we got rounding out the bottom. We got Alto, Lumi, and Yang Yang. It is what it is. They're not really that good anymore. And then Yohu and Yanwu showing up at the bottom over here. Baija's over in tier 1.5. Spectre Rover's in tier 1. Then we got Verena, Arrow Rover, and Shorekeeper. I think that's fair. I think the support list looks pretty good to me, and the reasoning still holds from prior resets, and I don't think anything else has really shifted that much. Now let's just take a quick look at what we look like with signatures, though. The main moves that are just being made over here is that Brant moves up. Also moves up to tier 0.5. I think that this is a little bit debatable at the very least, in my opinion. I personally don't think that Yuno's AoE is really that good at all. I think she has some of the worst AoE actually in the game outside of her liberation. And that makes it so that if you are in multi-wave content, which has been showing up a lot more frequently in the TOA, this character can have some big issues if you don't kill all the waves with her burst. And I think it's issues that even characters like Carlotta don't necessarily have. However, she does do a lot of damage. And the thing is, I just think she has a lot more clunk as a main DPS that, a lot of people might actually recognize. So that's just my take on it. However, her damage is up there. It's just very, very, very single target oriented. Otherwise, the placements over here are all roughly the same. Cantarella also moves up dramatically with her signature because her signature is very, very strong on her, which is fair. Oh, the rest of the lineups over here seem to be pretty much the same, with Zhang Liao moving up as well as Brant over the tier 1.5. I think that's fair overall. Yeah, I just don't think Zhang Liao is tier 2 without his sig at a baseline. But yeah, Qiuyuan can also effectively be tier 0.5 as well if you do play him with like Changelog cancels and stuff and get a little bit sweaty with him. Otherwise, rest of the lineups over here, nothing too crazy is shifting. It's just Rosea's slightly better, but Yinlin is still undeniably dog shit. And yeah, no other real movements over here. I would say list is looking pretty accurate to me, even with the signatures and all of that. Just, yeah, these are some of the better DPSs in the game, but the ones that follow, not really too much of a difference there at all. You'll still get your 2 rotation clears. You'll still do a shit ton of damage. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the Whimpering Waste changes. And these ones are going to be a little bit short as well. Qiuyuan, added as a tier 0.5 in both tier lists. Qiuyuan is one of Furlova's best teammates, and Furlova is the best Whimpering Waste character that we have. She has a stranglehold on the game mode that no other character has. This is currently enough to make Qiuyuan strong as a hybrid by default. However, he isn't only tied to her. His synergy with Galbreda is definitely still worth mentioning, as Galbreda does decently in the mode, not amazingly like Furlova, but she can still clear. Zani has also had the Expert +1 tag added. She has crazy room for optimization in her rotations, and when optimized to their best, she can perform as one of the best Whimpering Waste DPS units in the game. However, I do think that she's worthy of an Expert tag +2, because good lord, this character feels so shit to play in Whimpering Waste, it's almost unbelievable. I've almost never actually had as bad of a time using this unit. Like, fucking Zhang Liao Yinlin felt better to me to play than Phoebe Zani in that game mode. At least when I gave it a run. And I just gotta say, I think it's worth dropping her down and then adding Expert Tag +2 to uplift her multiple places, like you've done with characters like Jinsei in the past. Because, good lord, I don't know what it is. She's so clunky and unfun. It's almost unbelievable. And being in Whimpering Waste does not make the experience better. Let's just go ahead. Let's take a look at some of the changes over here. Furlova is undisputably a tier 0 unit in Whimpering Waste. I don't think anyone can really disagree with that. She has like the ramp up, she has the grouping, she has the stagnation, she has everything she needs to absolutely pop off in this game mode. Augusta, however, is going to be in tier 0.5. And my take on her is, I feel like the character has a lot of built-in clunk. I feel like it's way too easy to miss your liberation. I feel like it's way too easy to miss your first liberation cast. You know, the one where she kind of like dashes backwards and then does the slash. That one can miss so easily, it's ridiculous. And then her actual liberation, the one where she pulls out the sword and then, you know, does a little bit of that. That one can also miss because you activate it at the wrong wave interval and then you only clear like one wave. It is what it is. I think maybe that warrants putting her, like, with some degree of an expert tag because there's a lot of room to really fuck up with her. But I heard if you do time everything right, you can do really well. So maybe it's worth an expert tag +1. I'm not really sure. Camellia is also going to be in tier 0.5. I'm going to be real, though. I do feel like there's a bit of Camellia overglaze over here, especially when we're only going to be putting Qiuyuan in tier 1. I'm going to be real. You take Camellia's best team in Whimpering Waste, and then you take Qiuyuan's best team in Whimpering Waste, I'm gonna be honest. I think Qiuyuan's doing better. Because Qiuyuan's best team in Whimpering Waste is gonna feature Chacona, Yuno, and him. And it will pop the fuck off. Like, straight up, it will pop the fuck off. Just easily grab like 3+ K points on a whim. Automatically. Camellia's best team is like her with like Rosea or some shit. It's like, alright. It's not like the best thing ever. I just think it's like, okay. And I clear with Camellia every single reset. I don't know. I think it's just warranting a, you know, Qiuyuan bump up over here because you look at all the other characters that you got available. You know, I'm gonna be honest, man. It's not like there's a lot of stiff competition over here. Cartithia's placement, I think it's fair. I think she's pretty dog shit in WhiWa. I'm just being honest with you. A lot of people like to still say that Cartithia is like a good Whimpering Waste character, or like she's like way better than a lot of the other previous ones that we just talked about. I don't think she's that good. I'm going to be real with you. And the fact that she requires, like, buildup of erosion, all of that. She requires stacks on them for her liberation to deal the right amount of damage. It almost feels like you're encouraged to, like, delay some of the stuff you're doing. I don't really know about that. Galbraith also makes sense over here. And then Zani, you know what? Zani being in tier 1 with an expert tag +1, that's fair. I didn't know she was in tier 1. I thought Zani was actually in tier 0.5. But if she's in tier 1 with the expert tag +1, I think that actually works for me. So good call on Prydwen over there to show the sweaty mechanics. But I just think at a baseline, her team is like not actually that good in the game mode. Now down here, we're going to have Carlotta. Works for me. Ling Yang, also fine. Phoebe as a main, get her the fuck out of here, man. Phoebe main DPS is not tier 1.5. Just get this character out of the game mode. If you require Chakota to make this character function, nah, man. It's not good. It doesn't do enough damage. It does not do enough damage. I'm just gonna be real with you. Nah, get her out. Nah, she's in like tier 3, bro. She's so bad. She's so bad in WhiWa, it's crazy. And then in tier 2, we're gonna have Branto, Jinxie, good lord, and then Zhang Liao. I think these 4 characters are fair down here. I think Jinxie's fair down here. I think Yuno's fair down here. I think Brant and Zhang Liao actually could use a bit of a bump up. I refuse to believe Phoebe is better than Zhang Liao. I'm sorry. I can't buy that. I cannot buy Zhang Liao being worse than Phoebe in Whimpering Ways. That's Brant on main DPS. Guess what Brant on main DPS is doing? He's dropping an anchor and clearing 3 ways at once. What the no fucking Phoebe is doing that. Dropping an anchor and clearing 3 ways at once. That's what Brant does as a main DPS. Nah, I don't know about that one, though. I don't know about that one. Now let's take a look at the hybrid category. Mono Fusion up here. Cantarella and Qiuyuan because they support Ferlova. Makes sense to me. Yuno over here because she supports Augusta. Fair to me. And then Mortifi and Sanhua because they're just the best 4-star units in the game. And then in tier 1.5, we're going to have Chakona. I do think Chakona still needs to be brought up. Chakona has an incredible amount of grouping and great AoE burst damage that works really well in the game mode. And then she also has Static Mist too, which is, again, when you're not with Kartithia and you're using Static Mist, going from Chakona to Yuno is actually amazing with Static Mist. You give Yuno an attack buff. It's awesome. Danjin is questionably here, and Rosia is somehow in tier 1.5. I think it's just because this unit is dog shit. She's so bad. And then we got Yinlin and Jeja down here because they're not really that good in AoE content. Though Yinlin does feel surprisingly nice because she can generate her forte so fast. And then we just got a bunch of bums. Shorekeeper and Verena up here. Makes sense to me. I like Verena on side 1 because she can activate her buzz faster. Shorekeeper on side 2. But there's been less and less of a need of healers lately, so it is what it is. Now, let's take a look at the list with signature and see if there are any big shifts. Boom! Absolutely nothing. The list looks literally exactly the same over here. I would dare say, again, Camellia, I don't really think she's that good. And there's really been no updates at all other than Rosia moving up. Chakota also moves up, and Yuno seems to be in the exact same spot that she was. The 4-star characters have all moved down. Brett moves up as well, but Zhang Liao's still in tier 2. I'm gonna be real, man. I've been using Zhang Liao with Yinlin and the Plunderer's token for quite a while. This thing just gets like 2.7k every single time. Not even being that sweaty, it just gets a comfortable 2.7k every single time in WhiWa. And I feel like that doesn't seem like tier 2 material to me. I think at the very least it's tier 1.5, especially if this bum-ass, dumbass Phoebe pick is going to be here too. Because like, I would rather play Zhang Liao for 10 hours than try to get 1 clear with Phoebe. I'm just being honest with you. I hate this character so much in this game mode, it's insane. I don't even know what she's doing up here. Hey, maybe somebody knows better than me, but I think there's a waste of time. And then Jinxie's down here. Same lineup you got going on. Same lineup over here. Same lineup over here. And then, yeah, these characters are just not really that great in AoE content because her Judgment Strikes run out and then her Liberation coordinated attacks are entirely single target. I mean, I would just say overall, the list does look pretty... I still have a lot of questions about the Whimpering Waste tier list. I still think the main DPS category needs quite a bit of work. I still think that some characters are being overstated or some are being understated. Namely, her, him, her. Get her the fuck out. Him, he should probably be higher. He should be a little bit higher. And she is in a good spot. So those are my main sort of like gripes with it. Nothing too major. but it is what it is. Now, let's go ahead and check out the newest page added to Prydwen and take a look at their Qiuyuan reviewee. So, let's check out the pros. Quick rotations, strong specialized buffing, and easy gameplay make for a high-quality buffer. Yeah, he's basically like Sanhua. And when you understand that Sanhua is one of his relatives, he's like her great-uncle or some shit, it makes a lot of sense, because they play in a very similar way. Both rotating extremely fucking fast, having incredible concerto generation, and then they get their buffs and they get out in like several seconds, and that's all they need. Second, the echo skill damage niche is currently very strong in the meta, with Frolova and also Galbrina, and Qiuyuan is the ultimate buffer for those characters. That's without a doubt entirely true. He also has very good, permanently accessible weapon options, which makes him not as costly as more recent hybrids that want their weapon for higher personal damage and buffing potential. And while this is true for Qiuyuan, the difference is on the lower end, and his signature can be easily replaced with Emerald of Genesis, with no cost at all. Cons. Qiuyuan's value is tied to echo skill damage dealers until S3, at which point any modern DPS can function amazingly well. His value therefore dies alongside Galbrina and Frolova. If you don't have Galbrina or Frolova, pulling him at S0 and only S0 is kind of breaking your account. I'm just going to tell you that. Because you will have nobody to fucking use him with. You'll be wondering why you spent all the pulls, why you leveled him all up. Guys, this would be like pulling a character, like pulling fucking Jeja, and you don't have Jinsei and you don't have Carlotta. Great, you'll be able to buff resident skill damage and glacial damage. Who are you going to pair with her? Nobody. There's no use cases. And that's how Qiuyuan is at S0 if you don't have Galbrina and you don't have Frolova. So I would highly recommend, if you don't have either of those two units, you are either pulling this guy S3 to play him as a main DPS, or you're not pulling him at all. That's my take. Optimal echo sets vary in between team choices. Optimizing his build while wanting to keep him flexible in Galbrina and Frolova can prove to be expensive on resources. Yes, sometimes he wants like Moonlit Clouds, sometimes he wants like Law of Harmony. There's a lot of different ways you can go about it. It's just, it can get a little bit complicated real fast. But I think you can just keep him on Law of Harmony and sacrifice the 1% DPS that you would be losing for not using the optimal set. I don't think it's a big deal. And at S0, he can be fully interrupted on his Forte heavy attacks, which can completely ruin his concerto rotation and the majority of his damage. His special animation on his enhanced heavy attacks can be a little bit long. His S1 alleviates that problem completely, but you can also just cast it at a good time because it doesn't take that long to actually fully get it off. And he is relatively mobile, and you can end up dodging attacks while using it properly. But yeah, I would say this is a pretty good review, and I'm really glad that they hone in this much on how, frankly, useless he is if you don't have one of the existing echo skill damage characters. And this is a warning that I will be giving out for the next couple of weeks when it comes to this unit. Stay away from him unless you already have one of his best in slot DPS teammates. Otherwise, you will just hate yourself for pulling him. Yes. Oh, yes, Saint. I don't... Who needs logic when you can just aura farm? Well, you can go aura farm on floors 1 to 3 of the fucking TOA, because those are the only spots you're going to be able to fucking play him. So, yeah, you can go fucking aura farm, yeah, on floors with level 20 enemies. Awesome. That'll be that for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Our coverage of the list. Overall, I think it's a good update from Prydwen once again. No real complaints at all from me on my end. The logic and the reasoning makes sense. Just, I do think the Whimpering Waste DPS side of the tier list could use a little bit of extra work. But that's just me. Let me know what you all thought, ladies and gentlemen. Peace out.